Don't drink anything they hand you on that boat," the deckhand whispered, grabbing my wrist before I could step back onto the cruise deck. "I think your daughter is trying to kill you." I laughed. I actually laughed, because what else do you do when a 20-something kid in a white uniform grabs a 63-year-old man by the arm and says something like that? But he didn't laugh back. His eyes were steady and serious, and there was something in them that made my stomach drop the way it does when you already know the answer to a question you haven't asked yet. "Tell me where you're watching from right now." Because at 7 in the morning on the Lido deck of a Caribbean cruise ship, with the sun just starting to climb over the water and the smell of salt in the air, I thought I was finally doing something right. I thought I was finally keeping a promise. "My name is Harold. No, wait, I'm sorry. My name is Conrad Ellison, and I need to start from the beginning because none of this makes sense without it. I spent 40 years as a structural engineer in Charlotte, North Carolina. I built bridges, literally, designed load-bearing frameworks for overpasses on I-85, the kind of work where a single miscalculation kills people. I was good at it. I was careful. I was methodical. And I brought all of that same careful, methodical thinking to raising my 2 children after their mother, Patricia, was diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's at 51. She fought for 6 years. 6 years of watching the woman who used to dance in our kitchen every Sunday morning slowly lose her ability to hold a coffee cup. The disease took her in pieces, and it took me with it. I stopped taking vacations. I stopped calling friends. I became a caregiver first and a person second. And by the time Patricia passed 3 years ago, I wasn't sure I knew how to be anything else. She left me a note. Not a letter, a note. 5 lines on a yellow legal pad, written during one of her clearer mornings. "Conrad, take the cruise. You always said we go. Go for both of us. Don't be stubborn. I love you." That note sat on my nightstand for 2 years and 11 months before I finally booked the tickets. My daughter Vanessa helped me plan the whole thing. She's 35, lives in Atlanta, works in wealth management. She's the sharp one, always was. Her husband Derek is the kind of man who shakes your hand with both of his and calls you sir. Every single time, even after 14 years of marriage. My son-in-law always made me a little uneasy, but I chalked that up to my own stubbornness. Vanessa loved him. Patricia had liked him well enough, though once, near the end, she looked at me during a visit and said quietly, "Watch how Derek talks about money, Conrad. He talks about it the way hungry men talk about food." I told her she was tired. We boarded the ship in Miami, a 7-day Eastern Caribbean cruise, stopping in Nassau, St. Thomas, and San Juan. Vanessa had booked us all in adjoining balcony cabins. She'd handled everything, the upgrades, the dinner reservations, the shore excursions. I remember thinking as we stood at the railing watching the Florida coastline disappear that Patricia would have loved this. The water, the open sky, that specific shade of blue that doesn't exist anywhere inland. "Dad, you look good out here," Vanessa said, looping her arm through mine. Derek stood slightly behind her, scrolling his phone. He smiled when he noticed me looking. "You've earned this trip, Conrad. The first 2 days were perfect. I want you to understand that. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't suspicious of anything. I was a 63-year-old widower on a cruise ship eating grouper and watching the sunset. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something close to peace. That's when the deckhand found me. His name was Marcus. No. His name was Owen. No. I need to get this right because it matters. His name was Felix Okonkwo, from Lagos, Nigeria, working his second contract with the cruise line. He found me on the Lido deck at 7:15 on the 3rd morning, before Vanessa and Derek were up, before most passengers had come out for breakfast. I was standing at the railing with a cup of coffee, watching flying fish skip across the surface of the water. He walked up beside me, pretended to check something on the railing, and spoke without looking at me. "Sir, I need to tell you something, and I need you to act like I'm pointing out a repair issue on this railing. Don't react. Don't look at me directly." I stared at the water. "Last night I was finishing my shift on Deck 7, and I walked past your cabin. The voices were loud. I wasn't trying to listen. But the man's voice said something I can't stop thinking about. He said, 2 more days and it won't matter. The seasickness supplements will do it gradually. Nobody tests for it. The coffee cup went cold in my hand. Felix still didn't look at me. I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if I misheard. But you're a man traveling alone with younger people, and I couldn't live with myself if I said nothing. He walked away, straightened a pool chair, disappeared through a service door. I stood at that railing for 10 minutes. My engineering brain, the one trained to stress test every load-bearing assumption, started running calculations. The seasickness supplements. Vanessa had given me a small orange bottle 2 days ago. These are better than Dramamine, Dad. Prescription grade. Derek's cardiologist recommended them. I'd taken 2 the first morning and 2 the second. I hadn't felt seasick, but I'd felt strange. Foggy in a way I'd attributed to sea air and unfamiliar sleep rhythms. I went back to my cabin. I locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and I looked at that orange bottle for a long time. Patricia's voice came to me. Watch how Derek talks about money, Conrad. I called the ship's medical officer. By 9 o'clock that morning, I was sitting in the ship's security office, a narrow room below the waterline that smelled like industrial cleaner and recycled air, across from Chief Security Officer Marianne Holtz and a doctor named Dr. Reyes. The pills had been analyzed using their onboard tox kit, which Mr. Holtz told me was limited but sufficient. The results wouldn't be comprehensive until we docked and sent samples to a certified lab. But what they found in a preliminary screen was not what a cardiologist would prescribe for motion sickness. The compound, Dr. Reyes explained carefully, is a sedative hypnotic. In low doses over several days, it would cause increasing fatigue, cognitive impairment, and cardiac arrhythmia in patients with any existing heart irregularity. Do you have a history of heart problems, Mr. Ellison? Mild arrhythmia. Diagnosed 4 years ago. Managed with a low-dose beta blocker. He nodded slowly. In someone with your profile, continued administration could trigger a cardiac event that would present as natural, especially at sea, where the motion and exertion are already stressors. Chief Holtz leaned forward. Mr. Ellison, I have to ask you directly, is there anyone on this ship who might have reason to harm you? I thought about Patricia's note on my nightstand. I thought about Vanessa helping me book the tickets. I thought about Derek's handshake, both hands, every time. I thought about my estate, the house in Charlotte, the investment portfolio Patricia and I had built over 40 years, the life insurance that had paid out 18 months after she died. I'd never told the children exactly how much, but Vanessa managed high net worth clients for a living. She was good at estimates. I told Chief Holtz everything. She listened without expression. When I finished, she placed both palms flat on the table. Here's what we can do, she said. We can remove you from your cabin, place you in a secure guest relations suite, and alert authorities in Nassau when we dock tomorrow. Or, and this is your choice entirely, you can go back to your cabin. You can behave as if nothing happened, and we will watch everything. I understood what she was offering, the difference between an arrest with circumstantial evidence and a conviction with everything they needed. My wife always said I was the most stubborn man she'd ever loved. I told Chief Holtz I was going back to my cabin. She looked at me for a moment. Then she slid a small device across the table. Emergency beacon. 1 press. I pocketed it and walked back up through the belly of the ship, through the smell of breakfast buffets and sunscreen and the 100 vacations happening all around me. And I thought about the fact that somewhere above me, my daughter was probably still asleep. Breakfast was at 9:30 on the main dining deck. I was there first. Vanessa came down looking refreshed, hair up, wearing the kind of effortless linen that costs what it costs. Derek was behind her, carrying 2 mimosas and already talking about the shore excursion in Nassau. Dad, you're up early. She kissed my cheek. Sleep okay? Better than the first 2 nights, actually. That was true. I'd poured both of yesterday's pills down my cabin drain. Something flickered across Derek's face. Just for a second. Then the smile came back. You should hydrate, he said, setting a mimosa in front of me. Long day ahead. I thanked him and didn't touch it. Over the next 12 hours, I watched my daughter and son-in-law the way I used to watch stress test results, looking for the point where something bends before it breaks. Derek offered me drinks 3 times. Vanessa kept touching my arm, asking if I was feeling all right. commenting that I seemed a little pale. The caring was so practiced, so textbook, that I started to understand what Patricia had seen years before I could. The shore excursion in Nassau the next day was a sunset catamaran trip. Vanessa had booked it weeks before we left Charlotte. Just the three of us, she'd said. Private charter, more intimate than the big group tours. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, before we left the ship, Chief Holt stopped me in the corridor near the gangway. Nassau Port Authority has been notified, she said. There will be people on the water. I nodded. Mr. Ellison, you don't have to do this. I know. The catamaran was beautiful. 40 feet teak decking, a Bahamian captain named Henry who knew every reef by name. The water off Nassau is a color that doesn't photograph right. Too green, too clear, too alive. Under different circumstances, I would have been speechless. Derek brought a small cooler. He poured drinks. He handed mine to Vanessa first, and I watched her carry it to me with a smile. And I thought about every sunset Patricia and I had never gotten to see together. I took the cup. I didn't drink. Halfway through the trip, the captain anchored over a reef for snorkeling. Derek and Vanessa went in. I stayed on the deck. Derek surfaced after a few minutes, looked up at me. Dad, come on. The water's perfect. I'm fine up here. He looked at the cup still in my hand. His expression did something complicated. That's when Vanessa surfaced beside him. She pulled her mask up and looked at me, then at Derek, then back at me. And in that moment, in the gap between what she expected to see and what she actually saw, I watched something shift in her face. Not guilt, something older than guilt, something more like grief. Dad, she said quietly, did you drink anything? I set the cup down on the teak deck. No, sweetheart, I didn't. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. Derek's face went through several calculations. Then he looked at my daughter and he said, very quietly, we need to abort. But Vanessa wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me, and she was crying. Not fake crying. I've seen fake crying. This was the kind that comes up from somewhere you didn't know was still open. Two things happened at once. A Bahamian Coast Guard vessel appeared off the starboard side, and Vanessa pulled herself up the ladder onto the deck, soaking wet, and put both hands on my face the way she used to when she was 6 years old and had come home late from her job site. Dad, I'm so sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I kept telling him I couldn't go through with it, and he said we were already too deep, that the people we owed. Derek grabbed her arm. Vanessa, stop talking. She pulled away from him. I'm done, Derek. I'm done. The Coast Guard boarded. There were 2 Nassau detectives with them. Derek went quiet in a way that told me he'd been in legal trouble before. He knew exactly when to stop talking. He sat down on the deck and stared at the water and didn't say another word. Vanessa couldn't stop. In the Coast Guard station in Nassau, with a Bahamian detective and a U.S. consular officer sitting across from us, she told them everything. The debt, $410,000 in bad real estate investments Derek had made without telling her. Loans from people who didn't send collection letters. They sent photographs. The plan. Derek's plan, she insisted, though she admitted she'd known about it for 2 months without going to the police. The supplements, purchased through a contact Derek had in Miami, a disgraced pharmacist who still had access to hospital-grade sedatives. The intended outcome. She said it plainly, in a voice that had gone flat with exhaustion. He said it would look like your heart, that it was peaceful, that you'd been declining anyway. I hadn't been declining. I'd been grieving. There's a difference. The detective asked me if I wanted to press charges against my daughter as well. I looked at Vanessa across the table. She wasn't performing anything anymore. She looked like a woman who had been making a terrible choice for 2 months and had finally, on a catamaran in the Bahamas, run out of road. I told the detective I needed a moment. I thought about Patricia. I thought about the specific way she used to look at Vanessa, when Vanessa did something she was proud of. Head tilted, eyes soft, not saying anything because she didn't need to. I thought about Derek's hands on my daughter's arm. I thought about 2 months of knowing. I pressed charges against Derek, first-degree attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. For Vanessa, I asked the detective to note her full cooperation and her role as a witness. The detective looked at me for a moment, then he wrote it down. Derek was taken into custody that afternoon. The U.S. Marshal's office was contacted for extradition proceedings. Chief Hortz, reached by radio from the ship, confirmed that the remaining pills from my cabin had been secured as evidence. I flew home to Charlotte 2 days later. Vanessa was on the same flight. We didn't talk much. But somewhere over Georgia, at 30,000 feet, she reached over and put her hand on mine. I didn't pull away. 6 months passed the way months do after something like this. Slowly at first, then all at once. Derek's trial date was set. His attorneys were good. His excuses were not. The doc screen results from the certified lab in Miami were unambiguous, and Felix Okonkwo, flown in from Lagos at the U.S. Attorney's expense, testified about exactly what he'd heard through that cabin wall. Derek was convicted on 2 counts. Attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit fraud. He was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. Vanessa pleaded guilty to 1 count of misprision of a felony, knowing about a planned crime and failing to report it. Her cooperation, her testimony, and a lack of direct participation in the administration of the substance were factors the judge considered. She received 3 years of supervised probation and mandatory counseling. I didn't go to the sentencing. I watched the news update on my phone from Patricia's garden, which I'd finally gotten around to replanting. My granddaughter, Vanessa's daughter from before Derek, who'd been living with her grandmother in Atlanta during all of this, called me that evening. She's 9. Her name is Lily. "Grandpa, is Mommy going to be okay?" "I think so, sweetheart. I think she's going to work very hard at it." "Are you going to be okay?" I looked out at the garden. The roses Patricia had planted along the back fence were doing what they do in late September, throwing out one last round before the cold came. "Yeah," I said, "I'm going to be okay." I updated my will the following week. The house, the investments, the life insurance. The majority will go into a trust for Lily. A portion for a structural engineering scholarship at UNC Charlotte in Patricia's name. A smaller portion, enough to start over, not enough to coast, set aside for Vanessa, contingent on the completion of her probation and 2 years of documented therapy. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a door left open. Last month I got a letter, not from Derek, from Vanessa. "Dad, I know I don't deserve to write you. I know that what I let happen almost killed you. I've been in therapy 3 times a week since April, and every session I have to sit with the fact that I knew and I stayed quiet because I was scared of Derek, and scared of those people, and scared of what losing everything would look like. None of that is an excuse. I know it's not. I just want you to know that the moment I came up out of that water and saw your face, saw that you already knew, I felt something break open that I think needed to break open for a long time. Mom would be ashamed of who I became in that marriage. I'm trying to become someone she wouldn't be. I'm trying to become someone you could eventually look at again without flinching. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know I'm trying. Love, Vanessa." I've read it 4 times. I keep it in the drawer of my nightstand, next to Patricia's note. Someday I might write back. I'm not there yet, but I think about it. Here's what almost dying on a catamaran in the Bahamas taught me that 40 years of engineering never quite did. The strongest structures aren't the ones that never fail. They're the ones designed with enough flexibility to absorb the failure and still stand. I thought I was building a family. Turns out I was also building a test I didn't know I was running. I passed it because a 23-year-old deckhand from Lagos decided that one stranger's life was worth risking his job over. I've thought about that a lot. Felix never hesitated. He saw something wrong and he said something, even though it cost him nothing to stay quiet and everything to speak. Most of the betrayal in my life came from blood. Most of the grace came from strangers. If you ever stayed quiet about something you knew was wrong because the person doing it was someone you loved, I'm not judging you. I understand it. Vanessa understood it too, until she didn't. But I want you to hear this. The cost of silence isn't paid all at once. It's paid in installments, quietly, over time, until one day you're on a boat in the Bahamas with a cup of poison in your hand and you realize the payments have finally come due. You deserve people around you who would never hand you that cup. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting someone you loved? I want to hear your story. Every voice matters here. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the most important warnings come from the quietest places. Subscribe to Voices of Uncle Russell, and I'll see you in the next one. I keep thinking about the orange pill bottle. Small, ordinary, the kind of thing you'd find in any medicine cabinet. Vanessa handed it to me with both hands and a smile and said, "Derek's cardiologist recommended it." I took it without question because she was my daughter and I loved her, and love, I've learned, is the most effective blindfold ever invented. Patricia tried to tell me. She used the word calculating and I used the word paranoid, and we both went back to our lives. I was the engineer. I was supposed to see load-bearing failures before they happened. But I looked at my own family and saw what I wanted to see, not what was actually there. That gap between what we want to be true and what is true is where most of the damage in a person's life gets done. Here's what I understand now that I didn't then. The choices we make when we think no one is watching are the most honest version of who we are. Derek made his choices quietly, over months, in back channels and Miami pharmacies and whispered conversations on Deck 7. He believed he was smart enough to outrun the consequences. He wasn't. He never is. Not because the universe is watching with a scorecard, but because actions have weight. They accumulate. Every shortcut, every lie, every moment of treating another person as a means to an end. It builds into something that eventually collapses under its own pressure. Derek's plan failed not because I was clever, but because Felix was decent. One young man from Lagos decided that doing the right thing mattered more than staying out of it. That kind of moral backbone, the willingness to act on what you know is right even when it costs you something, is rarer than people admit. And it is the only thing that holds any of this together. Vanessa's choices were different, and I spent 6 months trying to be honest with myself about that. She knew. She stayed quiet for 2 months because she was afraid. And fear is a real thing. I don't dismiss it. But fear is also a choice. Sustained daily, and every day she chose silence was a day I got closer to that boat railing in the Bahamas. What saved her, I think, was the moment she finally stopped calculating and just looked at her father's face. Something in her broke open. That's not weakness. That's the first honest thing she'd done in 2 months. Whatever she built from here, she has to build it on that, on the willingness to see clearly even when clarity is the most painful option available. I'm 63 years old and I've spent my whole career stress testing structures. I know now that the most important structure any of us maintains is the one inside. The ability to think straight under pressure, to act with integrity when it's inconvenient, and to keep going after the things you love try to take you down. Those 3 things: a clear conscience, a clear head, and the grit to keep standing. They're not qualities you either have or don't have. They're built, like everything else worth building, one decision at a time. I'm still building. Patricia's roses came back this fall. Lily goes on Sundays. The door is still open, barely, just enough. That's enough for now.